Robert W. Bales, V-A-I-L-E-S.
Robert, where are you from?
Knoxville, Tennessee.
Okay. Where did you go to school?
Knoxville High School.
And did you finish school?
Well, I was in midterm in the senior year. You know, back then they had A and B.
Okay.
And I graduated from A to B. But I was drafted during the summer before I went back to school. So I didn't get to graduate at Knoxville High School at that time. Now, after I'd finished my basic training, they sent me to advanced military school.
Okay.
6 months. And when I came back, my company commander called me in and said, I see you didn't finish high school. Why? And I said, well, I was drafted in midterm. And he said, well, your records here at school, they're awful good. I believe you ought to be able to graduate. So he wrote my principal at Knoxville High School and sent my grades there in that school. And he said, yeah, we'll graduate him. So they gave me a 3-day pass to graduate from Knoxville High School, but it was a year later, class.
And what year was this?
44, yeah, 44.
1944. Now, Bob, you came from a big family, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, I grew up with 3 sisters and 5 brothers.
5 brothers.
And we had a big time. We was a big happy family. A lot of things happened in our family.
Mm-hmm.
And but I remember when I got my draft notice. See, I was still carrying the New Sentinel paper.
Okay.
I carried the paper from the time I was 12 till I went in the Army.
Now, let me back up just a little bit. What number were you out of all the siblings?
Oh, that's last.
Last one?
Yeah, number 13. Number 13.
She lost 3.
Okay, she lost 3. Okay, so you were carrying the newspaper, and you got your draft notice. Then what happened?
Well, I remember that day that I left, you know, the streetcar was just a block away from our home. And I remember I could, when the streetcar turned the corner, I could still hear Mama crying. Because I was the last one.
And how did that make you feel?
Well, it touched me, but when I got on the train, there was another boy from Lincoln Park, but he was older than me, but he was married,
mm-hmm.
and he cried all the way to Fort Oglethorpe. Wow. And I tried to console him, and but I never saw him again after we
got off the train.
Yeah.
Now, where did the train take? I mean, where did you were in Knoxville.
Fort Oglethorpe.
But you left from Knoxville, right? The train?
Yeah. On the Southern Railway to Fort Oglethorpe, okay. Georgia.
And then that's where you went and did your training?
No.
Yep.
That was just where they took you in the Army.
Okay, intake.
And then they sent me to Fort McClellan, Alabama.
And did you get there by train also?
Yeah.
And what was it like being on the train and going from one place to the other?
Well, I didn't know what to think. I just kind of awed by looking out the windows at all the different, you know, scenery and everything. That kept me pretty well occupied, going through Chattanooga and different places. But then when I got to Fort McClellan, at Knoxville High School, I'd had 2 years of ROTC.
Okay.
So I was a pretty good soldier, you know. I knew all the short order and the extended order drills. We had a rifle range at high school. And see, we drilled 3 times a week. So I was a pretty good soldier
When you got there.
when I got there.
Now, since you were the youngest, and you had 5 brothers, or you were number 5?
Tell them all the brothers that were in the service, starting with Walt, the oldest.
Yeah, Walt was the oldest.
So you had Walt.
He was at Fort Knox.
Okay.
And then Carl, he went in after I did. I mean, he went to Camp Hood, Texas. And he did the same thing that I did. He was an instructor.
Okay.
And then HL, the one that got killed, he was the first one to go in, get drafted.
Now, what was HL's?
Hartsville Luther.
Hartzell Luther, and where was he killed?
At Northern Luzon,
Okay. And when was this?
1945, May.
May 1945. Memorial Day? Is
Yeah.
that what you told me earlier?
I was stationed at Camp Maxey, Texas at that time.
And losing a brother in the war, tell us how that made.
Well,
What's
it
it
made
like?
me want to go right then to fight. Because I was an instructor, you know, had been an instructor of infantry training, and I would have been a good combat soldier. And I wanted to go right then to fight. But you do what the Army tells you.
So you had 2 other brothers that served, right?
Red?
Red,
Know about Red?
Frank, he was a year and a half older than me. He served, he was in the Air Corps.
Okay.
He went to Italy.
Now, when HL was killed, did they let you come back for his funeral?
They let me, yeah, they gave me 10-day furlough to come back home.
And
When he died, when we got notice he died, they gave me a furlough. Well, I was already home discharged when they sent him back home.
And tell us about, I mean, we know how our current soldiers the funerals are. What was it like back in World War II when a soldier came home that was killed in action? Was there a big
It
funeral?
was just like a family, you know, just like a regular death in a family. All the friends and everybody, and we had just a regular funeral like if they did any other member of the family. And my wife over there, she was just a kid, and she sang at his funeral.
So your wife sang at his funeral.
Yeah, they weren't married yet.
Okay.
Well, I was a young teenager.
Wow. Now, after the funeral, you went back to Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and you were an instructor.
Yeah.
Tell us about being an instructor.
Well, I first started at Fort McClellan. After I finished my basic training, they kept me over and didn't send me overseas with the rest of the men. And that's when they sent me to school, you know. And I came back from school, they made me an instructor, and I stayed there for 18 months as an infantry training instructor. And we taught all types of combat there. We taught combat in Europe, you know. And we had taught M1 rifle and 30 caliber machine gun and 60 millimeter mortar. You know, we was the light weapons. And of course we taught combat training in the field, like going on maneuvers for 6 weeks in combat situations. We taught all that.
The young soldiers that you were teaching, knowing, I'm sure a lot of them knew that they were going into battle
Yeah.
and may not even come back. Was that something that was ever talked about, or?
No, you know, it was just business every day.
Do you think they were ready to fight?
Yeah, oh yeah, they was ready. See, the training cycle back then was 17 weeks. So you can imagine how much training they got. And I went through several of those cycles as an instructor, both at Fort McClellan and at Camp Maxey. I was at Fort McClellan for 18 months, and they sent me to Camp Maxey. They opened up a new camp, and I was there for about 10 months before I went overseas.
And then tell us about what your career after being an instructor. Did you go overseas?
I went overseas. This is a funny thing. When I shipped out from San Francisco, there's 5,000 on the ship.
Okay.
Well, 3 days out, one of the sergeants came to me and said, "Did they call your name for a short arm inspection?" And I said, "No, they didn't call mine." He said, "Well, they didn't call mine either." And he went and talked to the captain. And there was 75 on that ship that should not have been on it, because we had enough service to retire. But we thought maybe, that's 3 days out. So we thought when we got overseas and landed, they'd keep us on the ship and bring us back. But we first landed at Yokohama Bay, and they let 2,500 men off.
And when was this? What year are we talking?
45.
1945.
And that was in September, late September, by the time we got overseas. But we thought, well, they didn't let us off the ship, and we figured, well, they're going to take us back home. But they took us back to Incheon, Korea, South Korea, and they put us out there. Well, that day that they unloaded us is a big storm. I mean, it's awful. The ship was rocking, and you know how they put the big nets out over the side for you to climb down into the landing crafts. Well, when they first started out, the men started falling off. So they had to stop that. So they went down to a lower level and put you in there like you was going to jump out of an airplane. And it taxied the boats up and tell you to jump. So I did. I jumped in the boat. There's 25 of us in there. And we got almost to the shore, I'd say about 20 yards. The boatsman let the front end down. We're still in the water.
Wow.
And it just flooded us all. We just all, you know, just swam out and had to swim to shore with our duffel bag and rifle and all that stuff, steel helmet. But we made it to shore.
Did anyone not make it?
No, everybody made it.
Everyone made it.
And so there wasn't nothing there. The only thing we saw was a rice paddy, but there's a railroad track went through there. So we all gathered around that railroad track, and about a half a day, here come a train. So we got on the track and stopped it. And we didn't know where we were, and they told us, and of course we didn't know. They said, we asked them where they was going, where was the city, and they said, well, we're going to Busan, Korea. And so they let us on that train, and we ended up down in Busan, as in the south.
Okay.
And we didn't see anybody down there, any soldiers. And then that night, we saw some colored men in a Jeep, colored soldiers, and we flagged them down, asked them where they was going, and they told us they was going out by the sea. They had was living in a Japanese schoolhouse. They got there a long time before we did, you know. Evidently, they was already in the Pacific. They just put them in there. But I never will forget the first meal was in a colored mess hall. They had, what did I call it, Barbara?
Goulash.
Goulash. You know what that is?
Tell
Goulash is macaroni and hamburger and
Okay.
onions and tomatoes, and boy, it's real good. That's the best meal I ever had.
Still talking about that meal.
And so they kept me there, and I'd have been in infantry all the time. They put me into quartermaster,
Okay.
in charge of a section. Made me a section leader of a trucking company, and all we did 24 hours a day was unload ships at Busan Harbor. Well, that's then in February they took us up to Yeongsanpo, Korea, and sent us back home. And I landed in Seattle, and then from Seattle went to Camp Chaffee, Arkansas, and it was discharged on March the 16th, 1946. And when I got paid off, I hadn't been paid since August of 45. Because, see, I was unknown. They didn't know.
Right.
But when I got paid off, when I retired down to Camp Chaffee, the paymaster gave me $950.
Wow.
Can you imagine a boy having $950? I was a rich boy.
And what did you do with that money?
Well, when I got home, my daddy always rented a house. We never did own one. So my oldest sister was living at home with my mom and daddy, and so I gave my sister $500 and told her to buy this house, and she did.
Wow. You're a good man.
And but I had $450 left, and I dressed myself up real good. And then I went to work at the telephone company, and I retired there 38 years later.
Now, how did you meet your wife?
Well, she was a neighbor. We grew up in the same neighborhood, and I really met her at church, I guess, wasn't it, Barbara?
Mm-hmm.
Do you care if I paint over and how long have you been married?
66 years, 66 this coming Friday.
Smile. 66 years.
And they have 5 kids, a set of triplets in there.
Wow.
All of them are great kids,
Yeah.
including him.
So,
Right now we've got a family of 35.
wow. So Bob, and Bob, you're blind, and you've been blind for how long?
19,
19 years.
be 20 in February.
And tell us, and how old are you, Bob?
91, 9.
So you're almost 92.
Uh-huh.
And what does it feel like for you to be a World War II veteran in today's generation?
You know, I don't think about being in the Army much. I was so involved after I got out in my job and my family and everything. I didn't give the Army much attention. But I support everything they do.
Well, I mean, you definitely did your part.
Yeah.
You trained all those soldiers, and we won the war.
Yeah.
So you really, I mean, you did your part. Do you ever think back on your brothers, on their service?
Oh yeah, we kept in touch with each other all the time we was in service.
Did your mom, knowing that she had 5 boys that served, I mean,
Yeah,
was it
broke,
hard on her?
well, yeah, it broke her heart.
Yeah. Is there any other stories you want to share with us about being in the Army? Anything that you remember, or?
Well, I remember the first day the first week at Fort McClellan.
Mm-hmm.
They had us to fall out and they'd give us a rifle by that time and fall out for inspection. Well, this tech sergeant, he commanded the company and turned it over to the captain, you know, when he got them ready, you know.
Right.
So they had the inspection, and I was the second man in line to be inspected. Well, the first man, he just brought his rifle up. He didn't know how to do anything. And he dropped it, and so the next one they come to me, and when the sergeant, I'd been taught when they move her shoulder, you let go of your rifle. So when that tech sergeant come to me, and I saw him move his shoulder. See, when he come to me, I went up to inspection arm.
Right.
And then I saw him move his shoulder. I just dropped my rifle. He slapped it, you know, grabbed it, and popped like a gun, the way it's supposed to. And it surprised him. And so he inspected my rifle and then threw it back at me, and I had to catch it. And I just caught it and stood there till he went to the next man. And then when he went to the next man, then I went back to order arm. And he kept looking at me. I wouldn't turn my head. And he went on down, and when he come back down behind me, he stopped. I didn't turn my head or nothing. Of course, you wasn't supposed to, you know. But anyway, after that first inspection, they brought me in and talked to me and wanted to know, how in the world where'd you learn that? I said, in Knoxville High School. I had 2 years ROTC. And we drilled 3 times a week. And anyway, right off, they made me a acting squad leader.
Wow.
You don't get a promotion, but they give you an armband with sergeant stripes on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wore that, you know, all during my training, even though I was a trainee.
Right.
But they'd bring me out and have me to drill the troops, you know, because I could do that better than the sergeants could. But it made it a lot easier on me.
Yeah, I bet.
Now, one time when I was at Fort McClellan, they decided that they wanted to make an experiment and see how long a soldier can endure on a forced march. And this was a 25-mile forced march with full field equipment, steel helmet, rifle, and everything. So I was one of them that they selected out of 50.
Okay.
Well, you march for 12 and a half miles, then you turn around and march back to camp. Well, 50 of us started out, and we got back to camp, there's only 2 of us.
Wow.
Me and a lieutenant in my company. And I got a steak supper out of that.
I bet. So what was that march like?
Well, you double timed, you know. And I was in real good shape, you know, just 19 years old. I was in real good shape. But the headquarters were disappointed in that march because so many of them, 48 of them dropped out, didn't make it. So they they didn't advertise that march too much.
I bet.
But anyway, I got a steak supper out of it.
Well, Bob, it great to interview you today, and really proud of your service and everything that you and your family did for us. And we know your brother passed away in the war, but we just want to thank you today for this interview.
Well, I thank you.